Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started a while. It's so nice to see so many people. It's been a while since we had a nice crowd here. My name's Nicole. If you need anything, I work at the History Center. A couple of announcements before we get started tonight. If you're watching from home, we are streaming on Facebook and on Zoom. And this program will be recorded and put on the York County History Center YouTube channel. Be pleased before you leave. In our lobby, we have an exhibit of paintings from the Veterans Gold Star Garden in York. And it was a painting, some kind of painting contest. There are paintings for sale, but it's done by the Gold Star Garden. So please check that out before you go. Just a couple announcements for programs coming up. Our South Central Genealogy Society is on February 6th. The speaker is Charles Kaufman, and the program is Celtic Language Heritage. Our second Saturday program is speaker is Richard Wagner, and he's going to be speaking about brewing in York. Civil War Roundtable this month is on the 16th. I'm sorry, next month is on the 16th. And that will be Scott Mingus and Jim McClure talking about rediscovering York County's lost Underground Railroad and Civil War sites. We also have a new History Center book club if you're interested. It is online, and the book for this month is Scott Mingus's book on slavery and the Underground Railroad in York County. And our next Allvets speaker is February 23rd. His name is Mark Askey, and he's going to be speaking about his time in Iraq. So if you have if you want more information about any of our programs, just go to the website yorkhistorycenter.org. And now I'd like to welcome, on behalf of Allvets, Ken Bair, who will be speaking about his experiences in Vietnam. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, it all started in Hanover Hospital on March 31st, 1947. So I'm old. My name is Kenneth Bair, or Ken Bair. I was in the Army from September 9th to 66 to August 31st of 68. I was drafted about a year after high school. I graduated from Dallastown High School in 1965. They're still trying to live me down. And before that, I went to Loganville, Springfield. That school I opened. It wasn't near as big as it is now, though. From second to the first grade. Now, to show you how old I am, I went in the first grade. I was yeah, I said the first grade, then instead of sixth grade. You got to watch me. I do that. I get confused. The first grade, I went into a one-room schoolhouse that had all 8 grades in it. It was on Yellow Church Road. They tore that down and they made it into a graveyard. It's right out from Light Church, if anybody knows where that is, on the Yellow Church Road. Before the service, I was working for York Mac as a truck mechanic. And I was also working on my dad's trucks and other people's around. My dad had a fuel oil business in Southern York County. I think the top wage I made before I went into the service was $1.65 an hour. So man, what kind of truck mechanic could you get for $1.65 an hour today, just to show you how it changed? All right, now to show you my family history, I had 4 people. Yeah, I figured this wouldn't work. 4 people that were in World War II, my dad and 3 uncles. None of them said much about World War II, but 2 of my uncles never had any children. So, and one of them said it was because he never wanted his son to go to war.
Oh,
You know, and so that was the one that hit the beach on D-Day. And I kind of understand that. He had a quick temper. I think he had a lot of PTSD before they knew what it was. The other one, I don't know where he was, you know, and the other uncle, all I know is he was in India, in different places. My dad was in Puerto Rico, so he sort of had it gravy. He said they only ever had weapons one time. He sort of hung out with the Puerto Rican girls, you know. But anyway, I was drafted September 9th, 1966. We come here to York to the old armory. The bus took us to New Cumberland. I can still remember the sergeant that swore us in. He was a big Afro-American, and he goes, "You boys remember problems of democracy," which is, you know, at Dallastown, we taught that in your 12th grade. He said, "Well, I want to tell you, you lost all your rights. You are U.S. government property now." And I said, "Wow, this is really good." From there, they put us in a train to Fort Jackson. I remember the induction center. Fort Jackson was a train, and we did have a bed to sleep in, but the dumb sucker went through Baltimore and Washington, and he kept hooking up. You know, you couldn't sleep because he was always banging around. Anyway, we got to Fort Jackson, and we stayed there for induction, you know, for whatever. And then they sent me to Fort Hood, Texas. Now, a bunch of us went by plane to Fort Hood. It was a commercial plane. In fact, they just picked one of the guys and they just put him in charge and said, if anybody didn't get there, he'd be doing their time. So he made sure we all got there. And so, oh yeah, and on the train, oh, wait, no, that was later on. Okay. But anyway, got to Fort Hood, Texas, where I had basic AIT, and I was permanent party there for a while. Fort Hood, we were trained by guys who come back from Vietnam. And I was glad they were, because they weren't too easy on us. You know, it was like double time, and I guess maybe that was standard procedure all the time after lunch and all that. But we figured out that they weren't really cadre, because every now and then they have to break out the book when they were drilling us, and they look at each other. And so, but they did come back from Nam, and I guess they were there. They left all that stuff behind, but they were hard on us. And AIT training, I was in armor. There were 2 divisions of armor down there at Fort Hood at that time. There was the 1st and the 2nd. I was in the 1st Division, Company C, 2nd, 13th Battalion, 1st Armor. They trained us on the M61, the M60A1 tanks. We learned how to drive, to load, the gun. You know, I can't remember whether we sighted guns in it at 1,500, or I think it was 1,500 yards, but I'm not, don't hold me to that. Don't, this is gonna go out on TV, so if I'm wrong, somebody will let me know. But, and when they taught us how to drive, they set up on a fender, and they wouldn't let you see what happened to the tank before you. So we had this ditch filled with water. So the guy says, hit it fast. Now the driver's hatch was open. Well, when we got to the ditch, he'd jump off and we'd get wet. And the guy on the other side that would take over and say, we're getting you ready for the wet season in Vietnam. And that, you know. So I finished up IT and I became permanent party. Now, in basic, we had the old wooden barracks, the old World War II, like they had up, up at, Fort Union Town Gallery. I think there's still some of them left. I haven't been up there lately, but, so you had that fire watch and all that. And I can't remember, it was 2 floors and I don't know, it was double deckers and probably about, it was a whole platoon of, trainees in there. But you didn't get that often unless you messed up. And, that was good. And then when we got to the AIT, we got upgraded. We had the new barracks with the central air, central heat, 3-story barracks, squad rooms, you know what I mean? It was like, I think it was 8 of us in a squad, and it had a day room. And I think it was a lounge in the day room. We had TV, down there, all that kind of stuff. And if I remember right, they had vending machines in there. They never had no beer in them vending machines though, because beer still wasn't allowed on, well, it was allowed on post, it just wasn't allowed in the barracks. Or at least you weren't supposed to, we wouldn't have snuck any in, you know what I mean? None of us guys would have, right? So, then we had a nice dining hall there, except for when you had mess duty. We had to, it was not just our dining hall, it was sort of a dining hall for a couple battalions, I think. I think it was 2 battalions ate there. But, you get KP every now and then. Or if you messed up, then you got KP, If you didn't get out of bed or some shit like that, then you got KP. And you could get it for almost anything. But I made E2 after AIT sometime. I don't even remember quite exactly when I did it. And I made A3 because I was there almost a year. Before I left for Nam, I made A3 there. And that was in August of '67, they called us into the day room, and most of us had orders for Vietnam. So come home on a 30-day leave. Now, the one thing I gotta tell you about armor, and it was a big drinking operation. It was a lot of spree de corps, and we can do better than you can. And I'll tell you what, it was, but we drank a lot. We really did. And it wasn't anything else to do it for, but really. There was a nice USO and all that, and bowling alley and all that. That get old after a while. Drinking just seemed like it was that's where I really got into drinking. And I came home on a 30-day leave. And while we were at Fort Hood, we played all kinds of war games. We had these things that you'd shoot another tank, and I don't know, it would hit it with paint or something. I can remember something like that. And then most of the duty, we'd probably go out in the field maybe once a month, maybe every 2 weeks, but the rest of the time you'd have guard duty and you'd work on the tanks. I can remember that we used to paint them with these little paint brushes, the little round brushes. And we got so good, we could paint a wheel a day. Because we didn't have anything else to do. Now, the best thing I write about Fort Hood was when you get range duty, range guard, they would set up a tank. 2 guys would go out, a tent. 2 guys would go out. And what range duty is when you had to keep the farmers, and you were supposed to keep the cows out. The bulls were sort of, if a bull was coming, you weren't going to do anything with him. But, you know, they gave you a radio. Now, I don't know whether they ever gave us a weapon. I can't remember, but I do know we had a radio that we could call somebody and they'd come around with Jeep. Somebody with a lot more rank than we were. And, you know, it's because some of the farmers sort of said, well, we're going in, we don't care. You know, we'd say, well, no, you know, and then we have to call this guy. And like I said, I don't remember whether we had a weapon or not. But it was good duty because you got 20, I think I did say this, 24 hours and 48 off. So you worked 24 hours and then boop, you were off 2 days. So that was good duty. Now, what I didn't like was we had a lot of parades and inspections. And I fainted one time at parade or an inspection and I hit the ground. They said at attention. I got stitches here in my chin. I can still remember what the doctor told me. He says, hey, Spec 5, come over here. He says, I'm going to teach you how to stitch this guy up. That's all. Holy, you know, this guy, you know, he's a medic. And then the doctor laughed and he said, no, but I was drafted like you and I don't like the Army either. And so, you know, the other thing when I was home and leave is I was only 20 years old. I got drafted at 19. So I couldn't drink. I could fight legally, but I couldn't drink. I could go off to war. That was all right because I don't know if any of you know of Finley's Tavern down there, but Finley was not my official uncle, but I worked for him mowing the grass as a kid. So between him and my dad, they kept me in beer. And so, you know, and right before I left, Finley actually set me at the bar and I said, you know, you can lose your license for this. But since Finley had been chasing Patton through the desert, he said, I don't really give a shit. He said, if you're old enough to fight, you're old enough to drink. And Finley was just a character. But anyway, so from Fort Hood, I reported to Fort Lewis, well, it was Seattle. Because I flew into SeaTac. And I don't remember exactly what the location of Fort Lewis was because after I got in there, they never let me out. You know, once you were in, you weren't getting back out because you knew where you're going. And I was there about 7 days, maybe longer, maybe 2 weeks. And I didn't get shipped out. All my buddies were gone. So I called my dad and I said, I don't figure this out. And he said, well, you're the only son to a business. Congressman Goodling has you on political hold. He said, I told him to put you in political hold. He said, you're not going to Vietnam. And I said, yeah, I am. Take me off of political hold. So for as much as I pissed the Murray one time about how I was drafted, and how I was forced to go to Vietnam, he looks at me and says, you dumb guy. You volunteered. And you know what? It made sense. I did. I volunteered for Vietnam. So, but I didn't think I was doing that. I was, you know how it is when you're in the Army. You want to do your job. So anyway, they shipped me out of there finally, and they flew me into Cam Bay. Now, how many of you people have ever been to Cam Bay? Well, that's got to be the nicest place in Vietnam. And I said, hey, this tour might not be bad. Hey, you know, this is pretty nice up here. And I don't remember whether they gave me jungle training there or whether they sent me to Cu Chi, the battalion, and I got jungle training there. But anyway, I went to the 2nd 34th Armor, which is the Dreadnoughts, and they were in Cu Chi. If I'm right, they flew me into Cu Chi. They might have flew a couple of us into Cu Chi at one time. But anyway, Cu Chi was downhill a little from you know, it wasn't Cam Bay. And then they said, oh, a battalion, they looked at me and they said, guess what? We're going to send you over to B Company. And I said, oh yeah, where's B Company? They said, well, they're working with the 1st Infantry Division at YK. Now, Ly K was a step down from Pucci. I didn't know that. I said, okay, you know, they said they're permanently TDY there, you know, temporary duty station, I guess. I think B Company was with them the whole while. I don't really know if we ever went back or not. But anyway, I've got flew in there, and I was the only replacement for our company on the plane. Now, there were other guys on the plane. But, and as I got off the plane, I remember seeing these 57 coffins. That's the way I remember it. I think it was 57. And I looked at it and I said, they were all, you know, they were there waiting to be loaded. And Graves Registration was there, of course, to help the guys load them. And I said, what's that? Who you know, tell me them coffins are empty. And they said, no, Second 28 got their ass kicked. And the other day, and we're sending them home. Right then and there, I decided it was going to be a long tour. You know, and I wanted to get out of this place in one piece. Now, I got to tell you something. When I left for Vietnam, I said I would never drink in Vietnam because I was going to keep my wits about me. So at that point, I must have knew that liquor did not go along with being altogether coherent. So anyway, and after I got out of Fort Lewis, I didn't have any drink. I think they probably acted something to drink at Lewis. I can't remember. But anyway, and that was October 17th, the way I remember it, in 1967. And so I asked the guy at Graves Registration where Company B is. He said, straight down the road. So I found it. And I stopped at the orderly room, and of course the captain was there and the first sergeant were there. They sent me right over to supply to draw my stuff, which was, you know, it was a 45, and I think jungle, you know, fatigues or something like, you know, I can't remember what all I draw. But anyway, and then they told me to come back when I got done with that, and they'd show me where the barracks was. Okay. They might have pointed it out where it was, but anyway, they told me when I got that, I could set up in that barracks because my platoon was in base camp that week. We had 3 platoons and they rotate. 1 week you were out in the field, or 2 weeks you were out in the field in an NDP or something, and the other week you were back in base camp. And they told me that after, and they said that my platoon was breaking jungle north with the Rhone plows. I didn't even know where the Rhone plow was, but you know, I learned. And they said that the club opened after lunch. So if I might want to go in there and get a drink. I don't remember whether I got lunch or not that day. But anyway, when I got to the club, and I said, they said, what do you want? Beer, whiskey? I said, no. I said, I want soda. I said, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink my whole tour. They laughed. They said, we've heard that before. You know, it gets better. So after a while, tanks come rolling in, and I thought, well, hey, maybe this is my platoon. But then I saw it was the first platoon. They were running convoy. And I talked to them guys. They seemed nice, you know. And they got what they needed, their fuel, and their, you know, they picked up a couple supplies and all that. They rolled back out, and they said, 3rd platoon will be rolling in soon. So 3rd platoon rolled in about supper time. And I got to drive, they had M48A3s over there, no M60s. I never seen an M48A3 before in my life. That's what we had over there. And so they said, you think you can drive this thing? Well, I said, I can drive an M60. Well, let's find out. So they, you know, they had me go fuel it with the other tanks there in the base. It was right there in the base. We had the fuel stop. In fact, it was right out behind it wasn't but a block or two away from us. And Live K, I gotta tell you this about Live K, it was inside the village of Live K, the civilian village was the first infantry decided they'd be smart. They would put it in there, that way they could protect them. And then the Live K army base was out around, and there was wire on either side of it. So that the VC couldn't get in. But the VC was smarter than that. I think they had friends up at Pucci where they had all the tunnels. And they had tunnels that they could get into the village, you know. So it was not a good place to go after dark. It was okay during the daylight, but it was not a good place to go after dark. So anyway, that night, first night, I went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night and there was loud explosions. And I heard her say, oh shit, we're getting mortared and rocketed again. Run to the bunker. And you know, they sort of looked after me because I was the F and G, you know, I was that. For you guys who are in the service, the ladies don't need to know. So I was never so scared in my life. I mean, don't get me wrong, I crawled over that wire and they were shooting over my head facing, but this was for real. These guys were trying to kill us. You know, and I think that's when the seriousness of the war finally. Anyway, we had beer back in the barracks. I decided I was drinking. That didn't last too long, did it? And so the rest of the week we were breaking jungle around like K, and the tank I was running didn't have a escape hatch in it. So this one Afro-American sergeant took a liking to me. He always called me Beers. It might have been because I always had one in my hand after that first day. He said, Beers, he said, don't play John Wayne over here. Don't drive without an escape hatch. And he said, now get a couple buddies, and the quarter cab has a tank in our motor pool, because that's where they used to pull tanks out of. It's going back to be combat lost. Get that escape hatch, because ain't nobody gonna miss it. Put it in the tank you're running, and I can't remember what tank it was. So, okay, so then the rest of that week we were breaking jungle. So the next week, I don't know if the platoon sergeant thought I needed special instructions or what, but he put me on his tank. And that's when I hit my first mine. Now, if I thought that being mortared and rocketed was bad, when you hit your first mine, you don't know what's going on. All you know is the tank sort of rocks and dirt flies everywhere and then suddenly stops. And when the dust settles, there's a big hole in the ground and the tank is damaged. Well, that tank was that bad. And I have a picture over there where the guy was standing, the buck sergeant was standing, he goes, damn, we had another mine. And that's the only reason I knew we had a mine. And I was in the bustle rack. I don't know why I was in the bustle rack. But I guess because the buck sergeant had rank and he was standing in the loader's hatch. And so, next thing I knew, I was on the back deck. You know, whoop. Anyway, and then, so that was combat lost. Now, for you, how many of you guys ever were on a tank outfit? All right, so you guys are going to know this other stuff. The difference between an M48A1 was 90 millimeter main gun, 30 caliber alongside of the main gun, 7.62. Oh yeah, that's a 7.62, and the 50 caliber was at the commander's hatch. Yeah, you got to. I had a stroke, so I'm not really all that good. An M60A1 has a 105 main gun and the 30 caliber alongside. and 50 at the commander's hatch. Now, the different types of ammos, at least this is the only four I've ever heard. And I'll ask you guys later on whether it's any more, or maybe I don't know. Was a shotgun round, which was 1,165. All I can say is they were about the size, the pellets were about the size of a filtered cigarette, the filter on a filtered cigarette. So you figure if you're standing in front of that gun and somebody fires it, there ain't gonna be too much left of you. And then there was the HEP round, which was the high explosive round. And that could either explode in impact, or if you could set it that it would come a couple second delay if it was going into a bunker or something. At least that's the way I remember it, because that was always what we do when we were firing in the bunkers. We'd set it and they'd delay and they'd think it wasn't going to go off, and then boom, you know, we were mean. And then there was a white phosphorus round, or the Willie Peter. And Willie Peter rounds, we didn't carry any Willie Peter rounds, white phosphorus rounds, or anti-tank rounds. The anti-tank round, I don't know what they actually called it, but we never carried any of them in Nam because we were down close to Saigon and we never saw an enemy tank. So I don't know what we'd have done if we never ran across an enemy tank. But, and there's, in the M48, there was 67 90 millimeter rounds. I'm going to say 3,000. I don't remember rounds for the 7.62. That's, I think I picked that up somewhere, and probably 500 to 1,000 for the M50. The engine was a 750 horsepower diesel Continental. It was diesel. Before Marines, they had gas. Ooh, I was never going to run one of them. And when we changed it, we changed the engine. We call it packs. We changed the pack. So that would be the engine, transmission, final drive. The average speed that we could get was 30 to 40 miles an hour. If you learn how to turn the Bruiser Master pump up, which at the time I knew how to do, that's what made me so special. We had the fastest tanks around, but you could get a couple more miles an hour out of, but they would throw tracks and everything else. The range on fuel, I think it was about 160 miles, if I remember. We never went that far. I mean, you know, convoys were, you never had a convoy that was over 40, 50 miles, and you know, then there was fuel there. You'd fuel there and you'd always keep it full. And I read this in a book. I didn't really know what the fuel capacity was. They said that it was about 335 gallons. Because I never ran one empty. It wasn't a good idea. And some of ours had infrared scopes on them. Now, I don't know how you figured out what. I think the platoon sergeants and platoon leaders tanks were the ones that had the infrared scopes. But as I looked over some of the pictures, there were some of the other tanks that had them on. But an infrared scope was not good in the jungle because the trees, when you break them and all that, would hit it. And that's what we could do. We could break down trees as long as they weren't really, really big. Now, then there was the other thing, red ants. When you were breaking jungle, you'd always have to look up. Of course, after you're breaking it for a while, you get a little lax on that. Well, they claim there's a picture of me somewhere, and they've never showed up at a reunion yet. And nothing but my underwear, covered with red ants, because the nest come down right in the driver's hatch as I was driving. Now, if it ever shows up, I'm going to destroy it. Oh, and you could neutral steer in a tank. If you popped it neutral, you could, you know, but you'd have to watch it or you took the track, you know. So, and that was automatic. It was automatic. Oh, we didn't have any air in it like you younger guys might have had. All right. And the 90 millimeter, lots of times we would use it when their jungle got that bad. We'd use it to just clear for the infantry or something like that. And, you know, we didn't care how many we shot. It was the taxpayers' problem back home. Yeah. You know, I combat lost 3 tanks over there, so I really didn't care. We're probably still paying for them today. But in the States, we carried a 4-man crew. We carried a tank commander, a driver, a gunner, and a loader. However, over in Nam, our company never used a loader because the loader couldn't get any air. And if you were shooting a damn shotgun round, you didn't need to be too accurate. And, you know, you couldn't, you know, you never shot that far. You were on top of whatever you were shooting. And now, for the guys that run tanks or was in the tanks, you're just going to say, well, what about the wet season? Wasn't it wet? Well, they had a dry season too over there. Now, in the dry season, we could get off the road. But in the wet season, you couldn't. None of you guys are infantry officers, are you? All right. Well, every infantry officer the tankers had to convince we couldn't get off the road in the wet season. Well, we had this one dumb person. He said, I outrank you, you're gonna take these tanks out to the road. Well, within about the length of here, this building, to across Market Street, we had 5 tanks hung up. It took 2 BTRs and a few other tanks to get us out.
Wow.
So he never asked us to get off the road after that. And now BTR was an M88. That was our tow truck. And that was also what put our packs in and all that. It had, and I think I have some pictures of it if you want to look here for the guys that don't know. And it had an 1.5 inch cable in the front. I think it was 1.5 inches. I don't know. I know it was hard to drive and drag in the mud. So I saw one of them tear one time. The guy had the 88 sitting with the blade down. It had a blade in the front, and he was revving it, and it was our motor pool sergeant. And the next thing you knew, this cable tore. And I'm telling you, it's lucky that nobody was in the way because they would have been dead. And we weren't sure that he wasn't dead, except we didn't see any blood fly. We figured he got down in time because the cable come back over the retriever. But anyway, and we hardly ever worked as a whole company. An armored company, when I was in, had about 17 tanks. There was 3 line tank units and, well, and 2 headquarters tanks. Now, I don't know about a headquarters company. Maybe they had a couple more tanks. They had 2. And so I was never in a headquarters company. And then, of course, we had 1 VCR, and a command track, and then, you know, all the other things we had. You know, like the 2.5 and the fuel truck and all that. 20 men to a platoon in a tank outfit, because you're supposed to have, and the medic. In Vietnam, I think every platoon had a medic. I don't know that it was like that in the States. But anyway, we were hardly ever up to snuff anyway. You'll find out why in a little bit. I gotta hurry up, man. I didn't know it was gonna take this long. So my first S&D, search and destroy, which is now called recon and force, I guess, if you do any recon and force or not. Mission, I was on tank 32. We were down the highway 13 to the south on a little low road called 301. Well, when we were going in, we received RPG fire of the lieutenant's tank. It pierced the tank, but luckily it didn't hit the ammo. However, the loader had his feet hanging down, he got hit. All right, and we received a little bit more fire. And then somebody, one of the other tanks called and said, 32, you're on fire. And my sergeant said, oh my shit, now we're gonna burn to death in this damn thing. And my sergeant said, no, they just hit my damn smoke grenade. But as I looked over, I saw he was dripping blood. And I said, Sarge, you're dripping blood. Yeah, I know, they shot me in the arm. He said, sometime between loading the main gun and all, could you get the first aid kit, put a tourniquet on it? He was a tough old bugger, I'm telling you, that boy was tough. He was from Germany. And so I did. And he was the last one to get dusted off. I remember 2 dust offs coming in, so the mechs must have lost a couple people to that day. But anyway, and he was the last one to get dusted off, and he took a Spec 5. He was a staff sergeant. He said, Spec 5, you're in charge of the tank. Now we got 2 guys in the tank. So we get, you know, to where we're going. So there, we set up a night defensive position. Now we're 2 men down first day out. And so we set up a night defensive position. And I don't know, we got a loader from another tank. So we had 3 men in the tank that night. Anyway, the infantry sent out a patrol out in front of the wire, where you guys that might not know, the wire is, you know, we always set up wire in a defensive position. And they, in case they got hit, well, they couldn't get back in right away. We couldn't fire the main gun. Now, if you look at the pictures I have, we always had extra track blocks so that the RPGs would jump off of it. Because if an RPG got to the ammo, and I think you tankers will agree, the whole crew was gone. You know, it wasn't going to be time to get out. So anyway, we got hit that night. They couldn't get, we couldn't fire our main guns until the patrol got back in. And when we did, by this time they decided they were going to overrun us. I can't remember whether there was any artillery with us or not. It must have been. I mean, we'd had it in 109s. We had to have it in the convoy. And so we called in air support. And here's where the Air Force come in. Snoopy come, and he saved our butt. Now, Snoopy, for those people that don't know, was a guy that had, I think it was a C-130, had 6 Gatling guns on it, I call them, machine guns that could cover, I think, every inch of the football field in about a minute. Wow. I could be wrong about that. Am I right? Does anybody know? Well, so anyway, that night we lost another guy. And he got hit in the head with shrapnel because he was trying to get in the driver's hatch. And we were told he was a vegetable and he would probably die. The infantry lost about 7 or 10 guys that night and a lot wounded. It was a bad night. And I remember the dust coming up, or I remember that thinking I wouldn't see daylight. I was really scared that night. Now, if you know, if any of you guys say you weren't ever scared, I think you gotta be a liar, or else you weren't really in combat. I'm sorry, but maybe I'm just chicken. I don't know. But when people are shooting at you, it's serious. So we had one more, and oh, he was permanently paralyzed. He did live though, and I met him at a reunion, a company reunion. And so, anyway, and he was in good spirits. And the company, the commander was pushing him around in a wheelchair. But he lives out in California, so I guess he's getting everything he needs. Well, many years later, and I got the book over there. Yeah, where is it? Bare Feet and Iron Will. Anyway, it's over there. It tells the Vietnam side of the story. I realized why we were going in there. It was because there was a VC, an NBA, it told me in that book, hospital and rehabilitation center in there. And so that was okay. And now I gotta hurry up because here's what caused me to drink for years. Well, at some later time in the tour, and it was shortly after Tet, I guess. I can't remember. Tet was from January, I think, to about April. We had 5 tanks running. We went in with, and in 3 or 4 days, we come out with 1 run. In the same, when they told us we were going down there, we said, oh shit, no, we don't want to go down there. But we did. And this was because by that time they had mined it better. And everybody lost a lot of tracks. I mean, we always worked with the mechanisms. And the other guy was leading. There was a guy that was only there 60 days. And he was leading all day, leading through the jungle. And then the doctor, we kept telling this infantry officer, we're too deep back in, we're never going to get back out of here in daylight. He kept going. I guess he wanted another rank. I don't know what he wanted. I heard he was from Bloomsburg, and for years I looked for him and thought I was going to kill him, but that didn't work out either. I guess it's better I didn't. But anyway, I got logs stuck in my track, and between the jungle, it was open fields. So we had to take the logs out of the track. So they kept the convoy going. And then when the next open field come up, we ran along, and my sergeant, or maybe I just did it myself, I don't know. But the sergeant that I talked to, said he was commanding the tank, said he told me to, and the lieutenant told us to fall in behind me. Well, again, I was following maybe 50 to 100 feet behind. And all of a sudden he went through 2 big trees in the jungle. And there were tank tracks in there. No, don't do that, because I've been there longer. That's going to be mine. And boom. So I know, I don't know, I guess I must have my hand on the seat to drop it. The shit flew all over the tank, When I got up and I looked, I couldn't see the tank. I could see tracks going off to the jungle. And so that was, and then I knew we had a runaway tank, and that ain't good. And so we backed out because I wasn't going over there. And well, I don't think I could have. I think the hole was too big. And so we caught up with it because it was running wild, and it was against the big tree. And we had a medic on our tank, and he jumped off. And then, of course, a couple of ACABs followed us, and their medics jumped off. And our medic come running back and said, "You guys don't want to see this. Keep the tankers in the tanks. You guys don't want to see this." Well, his escape hatch was either knocked loose by the explosion. All right. Now, this is the gory part. There was nothing left of him from the waist down. That was told to me by the medic. I didn't see it. I'm glad I didn't see it. I probably would never get over that. But anyway, and I felt guilty. I thought I was responsible for his death. I thought that I was a coward because I pulled him behind. Anyway, many years later, his family come to one of our reunions at Nashville. He was from Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama. And I almost didn't go to that reunion because I didn't want to meet his family. I knew they were coming. I almost canceled my reservations because I didn't want to meet his family. Well, his family wanted to find out what really happened that day. So 4 of us were there that were there the day it happened at the reunion. Now, we didn't tell him what was left of him. But some guy in a bar told his dad, and his dad had since died, that Park was laying out in the jungle all night long, screaming for help. And nobody answered. Nobody comes. But we told him, tankers don't do that. We go after our own. You know, we got the big guns. And so, but we told him he died instantly. And they said, man, mother will be so relieved that he didn't suffer. Now, at that point, all 4 of us said, if you ever find that guy, let us know, because we're going to, you know, we don't know what we were going to do, but we were going to tell him he shouldn't have done that. But anyway, they were so grateful. And that relieved my guilt a lot. It really did. It relieved me. And guilt can do a lot of things to you. Well, about 68 or 69, or wait a minute. No, I come home. Yeah, I lost my plate. And I got home and I'm running out of time. And I got married, I got home, come back, and come in through San Francisco, Oakland, I guess it was, and got to the airport. And I was in uniform because it was August. Well, it was the beginning. It was August. It was late August of '68, and the hippies were there. They called me a baby killer, and another guy and me, and they tried to spit on us. And there was a guy in a wheelchair. I don't know, maybe he was a bit. Anyway, we were going to take them apart, but then the cops come with the MPs, and they told us we were going to go to military jail if we did. So anyway, I got home. I bought a '68 Super B, 383 from Statler's. Money I had sent home. Why I didn't get killed driving that car, I'll never know, because I drank buku. I mean, I'm telling you, I drank. Anyway, I got married. 69 and New Year's Eve, I had a date with my first wife, Peggy Hollingshead, a friend of mine, her brother was. We had 2 children. Tom's in the back of the room now. He was born in October of '71. Tammy was born in October of '77. After 39 years of marriage, she got pancreatic cancer and died. Now, I went about a year alone, and then I married the second woman. And about 2.5 years into our marriage, she got stomach cancer. It was incurable, and she lasted about another 2.5 years. So, you know, I said, I ain't never getting married again. But Irene there met me at BBA, and I ran out of breath, man. I'm getting old. She chased me down. And we've been married about 3 years, and as far as I know, she's still in good health. Now, when I got home, I had a big chip in my shoulder, especially after what happened at the airport. However, about 98 or 99, I went to the vet center. My buddy Bill back there said, you need to go to the vet center, you need help. I met this man, Tom Murray. And he said, yeah, you got a war problem, all right. It took me about 4 years to convince me I was an alcoholic. Maybe longer. But he said, you got an alcohol problem too. Well, July 9th of 1994 was my last drink. I've been sober ever since. I joined AA, best thing I ever did. except maybe go to the vet center, you know? And for any of you that might not try, I brought books here from the first instance to the 25th, because see, I belong to two of them. I can wear patches on both sides of my shoulders because I belong to one, but I work with the other one. And I brought some other stuff or a book from when they went over. And so, okay. But anybody that's VA system, it's not, if you're scared of it, don't be. I mean, use it. I had COVID last December. Had I not went to a VA hospital, I think I wouldn't be here tonight. Because they gave me the presidential treatment. Don't get me wrong, I had to sign something, say they couldn't be held responsible. But at any rate, and now I want to thank Linda B. and Allvets for letting me speak. I also want to thank the Historical Center for housing us. And Linda is looking for speakers all the time. So Linda, wave, so everybody knows you, well, you got your name on, so everybody knows who you are. And most of all, you know, I think I want to thank God for giving me home in one piece. But, you know, and are there any questions? Man, I did a whole hour. They told me I could do that. They said I'm full of bull. Bill Rose will tell you I'm full of bullshit. Yeah, go ahead.
Did your tank ever work alone, or you always, two? Did your tank always work, ever work alone, or were you always in a platoon with other tanks?
The only time I wasn't in a platoon with another tank was the second time I think we went down in it. There was one day that we were the only tank that we towed one out. The first platoon was sitting on the road with a couple tanks, but they weren't going to go back in because it was dark. They sent one tank alone back in because we didn't have enough rank to turn it down. And I almost shot my buddy in the second platoon that night. That was the only time. And when the old man found that out, we never saw that that lieutenant again. I mean, I never saw him. He was gone because that was definitely against Six's orders. You know, no, we never worked alone. And generally, when we work with the mech units, they have a tank or two. Well, not always. If we were at pretty good, but you know, it varied. It varied. Did you work alone?
No, did not.
Okay, that was the only time I remember going alone, and you know, that was, you know, it was uncalled for. But thank God we survived it. And you know, I can't say enough about the VA system, okay? Because you know, they've saved me more than one time. Man, I thought this was only going to be a half an hour thing. My wife said, "Don't worry, you can bull anybody." So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to whoever takes it.
Thank you, Ken.
Unless somebody else. I'll leave him there. I don't know what happened to the chair. I thought I'll put that in. Maybe it is over there. But I suggest that book because that was wrote by the guy's son whose brother died, who was the general that ordered the Agent Orange.
Wow. Zumwalt.
Yeah,
Admiral Zumwalt.
someone. Does anybody? Yeah, I'm gonna walk over there and see it. Oh.